You meet a family that is wealthy. Somewhere back in their lineage generationally, they weren't. And then something happens. The one shows up. In every family, there's the one. And that one changes that family forever. In my family, I'm the one. We don't think like we used to think. My nieces and nephews are positive, forward-thinking, caring, good people with dreams. I wasn't raised like that. I'm the one. I'm the one who made the calls late at night. I'm the one who drove hours and hours for people to say no. I'm the one who dealt with the heat. I'm the one who typed all the emails. I'm the one who returned all the messages. I'm the one that dealt with all the stress and the strife and the cancellations and the back talking and the people who didn't keep their word to me and the difficult times. I'm the one who lost sleep at night. I'm the one who got up early. I'm the one who carried the emotional burden of winning, just like you are. You're the one.
You tell yourself you lack motivation. You say you're tired. You say you're uninspired. You say you're waiting for the right mood, the right season, the right spark. You scroll through productivity advice. You watch motivational clips. You promise yourself that tomorrow will be different. But if we're honest, motivation is not your problem. Standards are. And until you confront that, nothing changes. Motivation is emotional. Standards are structural. Motivation rises and falls with sleep, weather, praise, rejection, caffeine, hormones, and convenience. Standards do not. Standards are the invisible line you refuse to cross. They are the internal rule that says, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I no longer tolerate. And most people do not suffer from a lack of drive, they suffer from a lack of non-negotiables.
Those who have swords and know how to use them, but keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that's another thing I've been telling. Yeah, no kidding. That's a lot different, man.
Difference.
That's a big difference. It's so great. And so, like, one of the things I tell young men, well, and young women as well, but the young men really need to hear this more, I think, is that you should be a monster. You know, because everyone says, well, you should be harmless, virtuous. You shouldn't do anyone any harm. You should sheath your competitive instinct. You shouldn't try to win. You know, you don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be too assertive. You want to take a back seat and all of that. It's like, no. Wrong. You should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it.
Do you know the expression, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war?
Right, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right.
The Stoics understood this long before modern self-help existed. Marcus Aurelius did not wake up every morning overflowing with motivation to run an empire plagued by war and plague. He woke up to duty, he woke up to identity. He wrote to himself not about feeling inspired, but about remembering who he was supposed to be. He did not ask, do I feel like leading today? He asked, what does my role require? That is the difference between motivation and standards. Motivation asks how you feel. Standards ask who you are. When you say you lack motivation to work out, what you are really saying is that your standard for your physical condition is low. If your standard were absolute, if the idea of being weak, slow, unhealthy, or fragile was unacceptable to your identity, you would not negotiate with yourself. You would move, not because you felt electric, not because you watched the right video, but because your internal rule demands it. Standards eliminate debate.
So I had to realize I was delusional. I thought if you were a good person and you do right by people, that people will take your kindness and give you kindness back. But what I realize is sometimes in this world, the kinder you are, the more they try to play you like a fool. I was delusional. I'm nice to you, you nice to me. Don't always work like that. Sometimes it's nice to me and I take advantage of you. So some of y'all, you delusional. I just need you to do me a favor. When you are delusional, you can never get the outcomes you want because the premise in which you're operating from is a lie.
Most people live in negotiation with themselves. I'll start Monday. I'll go tomorrow. I deserve a break. I'll try again next month. This constant bargaining drains more energy than the task itself. Nietzsche spoke of becoming who you are. That process requires shedding illusions. One of the biggest illusions is believing you are waiting for motivation, when in reality, you are tolerating mediocrity. You have accepted outcomes that do not align with the person you claim you want to become. Look closely at your life. Where are your standards truly high? Perhaps at work, perhaps in how you dress, perhaps in how you speak to authority. In those areas, you do not wait for motivation. You comply with your own internal expectation. You show up, you perform, you correct yourself quickly. Why? Because the consequences feel real, the identity feels visible, the standard is firm. Now look at the areas where you claim you lack motivation: health, discipline, learning, building something long term. There, the consequences are delayed. The identity is private. And so the standard quietly erodes. You allow small compromises, and small compromises repeated, become character. Epictetus taught that we become what we repeatedly do. He did not say we become what we occasionally feel inspired to attempt. Repetition builds identity. Identity builds standards. Standards build consistency. Consistency builds outcomes. This chain is simple, but it is not comfortable, because it removes the romance of waiting to feel ready. Consider this carefully. A person with high standards does not need motivation. They need alignment. If their actions drift below their standard, discomfort appears immediately. Not shame, not panic, just correction. A thermostat does not get motivated to heat the room. It responds to a set standard. When the temperature drops below the threshold, action begins automatically. What is your threshold? At what point do you respond? You say you want to read more, but your standard allows 3 hours of mindless scrolling. You say you want to build strength, but your standard allows repeated skipped sessions. You say you want financial freedom, but your standard allows impulsive spending and avoidance of difficult planning. The truth is not cruel, it is clarifying. Your life reflects what you tolerate. Standards are not loud declarations, they are quiet refusals. I do not miss 2 days in a row. I do not speak to myself that way. I do not stay in environments that shrink me. I do not break promises to myself. Notice the language. It is not emotional, it is decisive. Standards are boundaries directed inward. There is also a deeper layer to this. Many people avoid raising their standards because doing so removes excuses. If you decide that being physically strong is a non-negotiable standard, then your current weakness becomes your responsibility. If you decide that intellectual growth is your standard, then ignorance is no longer accidental, it is chosen. It is easier to blame motivation than to accept responsibility for standards. Plato wrote about the divided soul, the part of us that seeks comfort and the part that seeks reason. When comfort governs, standards lower. When reason governs, standards rise. But reason requires discipline. It requires the ability to delay gratification. And that is precisely what modern life erodes. Infinite entertainment, instant validation, endless distraction. These lower the baseline of what we accept from ourselves. If you consume stimulation all day, your internal standard for effort shrinks. Deep work feels unbearable. Silence feels heavy. Exercise feels extreme. Reflection feels unnecessary. You are not unmotivated. You are overstimulated and underdisciplined. Your nervous system expects ease, and your standards quietly adjust downward to accommodate that expectation. Raising your standards will feel like friction at first, not because you are incapable, but because you are recalibrating. When you decide that you no longer tolerate certain behaviors from yourself, there will be resistance. Old habits will argue. Comfort will whisper. But this is where character forms, not in grand moments of inspiration, but in small moments of refusal. Imagine waking tomorrow with a single new rule. I keep promises to myself. Nothing dramatic, just that. If you say you will wake at a certain time, you wake. If you say you will train, you train. If you say you will read, you read. Over weeks, something subtle changes. You begin to trust yourself. Self-trust is born from standards kept, not motivation felt. Once self-trust increases, motivation becomes irrelevant, because you no longer rely on feeling. You rely on identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who executes. And execution compounds. Small disciplines accumulate into confidence. Confidence fuels further discipline. The cycle strengthens. There is also humility in high standards. It requires acknowledging that your current results are not fate. They are feedback. If your health is declining, your standard for physical care has been too low. If your finances are unstable, your standard for planning has been too low. If your mind feels chaotic, your standard for focus has been too low. This is not condemnation, it is diagnosis, and diagnosis empowers action. Because standards are adjustable, you can raise them at any moment. You can decide that certain behaviors are no longer acceptable. You can narrow your tolerances. You can tighten your internal code. The world does not need to change first, you do. But be careful. Raising standards does not mean perfectionism. Perfectionism is ego-driven and brittle. Standards are principle-driven and steady. Perfectionism collapses under failure. Standards adapt and continue. If you miss a workout, perfectionism says you are worthless. Standards say you correct immediately. The difference is emotional drama versus structural consistency. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort not to appear strong, but to raise their tolerance. Cold baths, simple food, minimal possessions. Why? To remind themselves that comfort was optional. When your standard for comfort lowers, your resilience rises. When your resilience rises, your execution stabilizes. When execution stabilizes, outcomes improve. Ask yourself tonight, what do I currently tolerate that my future self would reject? Write it down honestly, not to shame yourself, but to see clearly. Perhaps you tolerate distraction. Perhaps you tolerate weak boundaries. Perhaps you tolerate inconsistency. Awareness is the first elevation of standards. Then choose one domain, not 10. 1. health, work, mind, relationships, and define a simple non-negotiable. I do this daily, or I never do this. Keep it realistic but firm. Standards that are too extreme collapse. Standards that are too soft change nothing. Find the middle, challenging but sustainable. Over time, you will notice something interesting. Motivation still fluctuates. Some days you feel powerful. Some days you feel drained, but your behavior becomes less reactive to those feelings. You act in alignment with your code, regardless of emotional weather. That is freedom. Not freedom from effort, but freedom from self-bargaining. Most people think discipline is harsh. It is not. It is stabilizing. The chaos of low standards is far harsher. The anxiety of broken promises is heavier. The regret of inaction is louder than the discomfort of action. When you raise your standards, you reduce internal noise. Decisions become simpler. You conserve energy for meaningful effort. You do not need a new morning routine. You do not need another productivity app. You do not need to feel inspired. You need a higher internal line. A line that says, this is beneath me, and mean it. Not arrogantly, not performatively, quietly. You don't lack motivation. You lack a standard high enough to override your mood. Raise the standard, and motivation becomes unnecessary. Raise the standard, and excuses shrink. Raise the standard, and identity sharpens. Tonight before you sleep, ask yourself one final question. If someone watched my daily actions, what would they conclude my standards are? Not what you say they are, not what you wish they were, what they objectively are. That answer is not an attack, it is a starting point. Standards shape destiny slowly, invisibly, relentlessly. And the beautiful truth is this: you can adjust them at any time. Not tomorrow, not Monday, now, quietly, decisively. And once you do, you will discover that what you thought was a motivation problem was simply an identity waiting to be claimed.